So I'm going to be speaking from the perspective of empirical evidence. Now you've heard a lot about the theory and coming up from, say molecular level or from quantum physics perspective. But I wasn't very sure about, I was kind of standing on the fence until this evidence came up. So I was trying to figure out, and you see my little journey here. Now, photobiomodulation is really about delivering photons into your body and does something, modulating the biological system. But we focus on the brain, so we talk about the brain. And here is an example of a device that does it through the LEDs. Now, this is a field that is not quite well known, but people in our field is growing. They are biohackers, they are serious researchers, full of nerds, and I think the evidence is bearing up very strongly. Particularly, we get involved in other forms of brain stimulation too. So this has a very good foundation, and it is building. So I'm not going to go into the basic, very foundational mechanisms like what happens to the mitochondria, but you just have to bear in mind that foundationally it works on the mitochondria. If you're an expert in mitochondria, you know how that works out. But I want to go straight into what we're trying to do to see what it does to the brain. So we're doing this study. It's actually still going on. We finished recruiting. We're collecting data and analyzing data right now, but this is going to be on 43 or 45 subjects. Now, we picked two irradiation spots with optic fiber delivering laser, one on the forehead, one to the nose. We have to use it this way with laser and optic fiber because they're compatible with the MRI scanner. And what do we see? Now, these are a lot of images. I just want to give you a feel that we used two different wavelengths, 808 nanometers, 1064 nanometers. They're both near-infrared light. And one is through the transcranial, one is intranasal. And this is what we see. The peak, and this is this is a composite of all the 43 subjects. The peak for what you see here to transcranial, the head, is 150 milliwatts per square centimeter. And intranasal, I just want you to note the difference because this is kind of important to us, that it's only 9 milliwatts, about roughly 15, 20 times less power than putting one on the forehead. And generally, through fMRI imaging, you see more response from the brain in terms of blood oxygen level dependency. After 4 minutes, you can see the whole brain lighting up, and it's global, just 1 point, and the whole brain lights up. So this is just the takeaway from this one. Then we also did the EEG reading, real time again, with 256 electrodes. Now we can do this because, you have a lot of electrodes. You can put one on the forehead and one inside the nose. So, it's not interfering with the LED electrodes. And this is what we see is all over the map, right? This is 808, 1064, two different wavelengths, but the difference is actually very significant. 808, this should be intranasal. This should be transcranial. This is intranasal. No, this 10 Hz is 40 Hz, sorry. So we pulse at 10 Hz, we pulse at 40 Hz, alpha or gamma. This is only transcranial. We have intranasal, but we haven't fully analyzed the data yet. But again, look at the difference between two different wavelengths and two different pulse frequencies. If you're feeling like really overactive, you may want to go here, sorry, overactive, okay, you want to increase the delta slow wave, slow you down, or you feeling like you need to sleep, you're increasing delta and decreasing gamma, example. If you are, say, inattentive, 40 hertz, you want to maybe decrease the delta, the slow wave, and so on. So there are advantages in having all these many different characteristics, and we will find a way to combine them and deliver to the brain. And just to recap, the brain responds significantly to photobiomodulation. It is global. The wavelength matters, as I've showed you. Power density matters. The intranasal is most efficient. Why is that? Think about it. There's nothing between you and the brain, right? It's just nasal cavity. The olfactory bulb just sitting above it is part of the brain. And frequency really matters. We are using this as a basis to see what happens further. Now, you may have attended Earl Miller's talk, and I actually followed what he's been doing. Out of all this, he did a really good presentation talking about the faster rhythm gammas as actually associated with bottom-up processing with alpha and beta, electrical field influence, and so on. What we want to move on from here is brain rhythms are not just byproducts of neural activity. They are critical in organizing it. So for a long time in our field, I've always been wondering, is this EEG that we see, is it just a byproduct of your physiological action? Actually, it's more. He's saying here that if you can influence the brainwave patterns, you can influence the deeper physiological actions of the neurons. So we did a study. I will say that Sanjay follows me later. He is doing a parallel study at Tucson with University of Arizona. We were doing this in Toronto, and we wanted to see, now that we know that photobiomodulation can influence the brain, say by frequency, what happens. This was a double-blind study, 20 subjects. It actually is not published yet. We're just discussing about publishing it. Very briefly, it's 5 minutes rest. This is all taking the EEG readings and 20 minutes of EEG and photobiomodulation. So meditation plus photobiomodulation, resting. So we collected the data, and we pause here: 4 hertz, 10 hertz, 40 hertz, 120 hertz. And the sham, of course, PBM off, sham, and then there's control, just meditation. Later, Sanjay will present data on faster frequency, and that's important because we kind of stopped at 120 and saw this significance at 120 hertz. We saw more significance at a higher frequency than the slow ones. And we had EEG data, because 120 hertz with meditation and photobiomodulation is the significant combination. Just wanted to show the EEG. Actually, the EEG is very hard to interpret, to be honest. But what was significant is the primary endpoint that we use, which is the Mystical Questionnaire. So it actually, the Mystical Experience Questionnaire, it measures mystical positive mood transcendence of time and space and ineffability. So that is the primary point, and actually significant. That gave us very significant outcome for meditators when you measure it that way. So this is just a summary to say high frequency showed higher impact, and it shows suppression of the low frequency power, like this is delta. Now, let's look at how, how how this is happening. And this is where I guess this conference comes in, and we will resonate with it. But what we also did was we did cell culture study on tubulins, and looking at optical density, we found that it controlled when we pulse with this wavelength at 10 hertz. What happens is the optical density decreased. So we see a depolymerization here shown in this chart. We actually published this already, and we were in collaboration with Jack Dudinsky in doing this at University of Alberta. Now, this is not published yet. Nobody's got a time to write this. But when we do different frequencies, the crossover point seems to be at 40 hertz, like gamma, So gamma means something to people, but when we do change this frequency to higher frequencies, the crossover point seems to be at 40 hertz. And as we increase the frequency, 120, as we go to 1000 hertz, we see it goes the other way. There's repolymerization of the tubulins. Now this gets more interesting. So we wanted to see what's happening to the protein structures. This was published with we did use Raman spectroscopy, and I actually showed this to Anirban. Anirban said, "Oh, you didn't do it quite correctly, but you published it." And I'll use data what we have. He said it shouldn't look like spikes, but this was how we collected it, and we hope to do further studies, maybe with Anirban with another set of Raman spectroscopy. But the point is there is a shift from alpha helices to beta sheets. And the thing about it, why it might be important, actually, when you talk about the dipoles, you talk about the aromatic rings, and the structure of the tubulins, they're actually made of helices, the helical. Beta sheets sometimes seen as an issue. Then it looks like you're transitioning towards creating these structures associated with deposit and plaques and beta amyloid and maybe neurofibrillary tangles. So if you can do this shift, I think it's good. The alpha helices is actually more robust than the betas. The beta strands lead to the beta sheet. So you actually want to see that for a more robust structure in say the microtubules. So that leads to other things, right? You're talking about microtubules being the foundation of a lot of other things you see that's related to quantum resonances and all that. Now just to summarize, so 10 Hz leads to transitioning. In the microtubule protein structures, 40 Hz is consolidating, polymerizing. As it goes faster, it seems to shift more and more towards that.
Can you explain the significance of polymerizing or depolymerizing tubules?
Okay, polymerizing like aggregating. So the tubulins are like getting together. I think that's a simple way to put it, aggregating into a stronger structure that became microtubule. More questions we'll leave to Q&A. But if you have something that needs clarification, just let me know. Okay, it seems to be a key to further understanding, to consciousness. And I was wondering, okay, why is this happening? So through deduction, I felt that should be resonance somewhere. And there's a lot of discussion already in this conference about resonance. And so this is Stuart Hameroff's. I thought it's a really brilliant way of schematic representation of what's as you go deeper and deeper, the structure of structures that related to neurons and microtubules and tubulins. So when I'm not sure I did the calculation. Okay, anyway, at 810 nanometer, you do this wave frequency, use the wave frequency equation, the frequency is 3.7 times 10 to the 14. So you go somewhere here, is not quite, so this 10 to 14, when we talk about the tryptophan absorption, that's 10 to the 15, that's pentahertz. So it's somewhere here. And but we also have the other frequencies. Remember, the meditators is at these frequencies, which is somewhere here, right? And so we're wondering why these meditators actually had this shift. I showed you 120 hertz. Actually, we did a lot more outside of this study, and we just put meditators through the different frequencies. They go through a jhana state. Some of you may have already experienced with our devices, or an altered state, a bliss state at a certain frequency. And it's above 40, but many are like when we found 120. I leave to Sanjay to talk more about that in his presentation later. So there seems to be a coupling, and I thought, okay, do we multiply this into that and give you a really high frequency? No, actually, these fast frequencies are nested into the slower one, and that is coupling. So with that specific frequency, there's like a consciousness leap, and Stuart Hammerall would say the bing, and okay, it suggests there is, there's the OR in play, which earlier I said, okay, I'm not sure, but it seems to me as I'm shifting towards, using that as an explanation. Then deeper down is quantum coherence. So now this is interesting. I prepared this first, and I sat through Earl Miller's talk yesterday, and he said, there was a discussion, and he said the brain is like an analog computer. What we have here, we're talking about digital here, quantum. So I listed this hierarchy actually based on the amount of evidence that's out there. And there is far more evidence in the literature that supports that kind of work on the higher level, synchronization and neuroplasticity. And here we have a lot of discussion on microtubular resonance, electromagnetic field, quantum coherence. So that is more like this lower area. These are psychological evidence. There's some coupling, and biofields is not a lot supporting it. So we can break up into basically following his use of word analog and quantum here, or you might say digital. So let's cross that out, and you can actually connect them. So the question today was, how do we link these two, analog and digital? I think we've taken a step towards that, and photobiomodulation, which we used, seems to be drawing that out and connecting the two levels. That leads to this consciousness leap that we saw in the expert meditators. Now, so this is really nice, and I've always wanted to translate what we see in this, and I'm doing all this, basic research is trying to get a better set of parameters to go and translate into everyday use and help conditions like Alzheimer's disease. We are doing quite a lot. We are planning to do a Alzheimer's disease trial. We've talked to the FDA. We've talked to FDA for traumatic brain injury and a bunch of other things. I'm writing a paper now on brain fog and long COVID, which we have good data. But let's just go here for the time being. We have a very general because of what we see in alpha and gamma effects based on our work and a combination of work, we are combining alpha and gamma in future clinical studies to try and treat Alzheimer's. So, but we want to try to personalize it because all brains are different. For one thing, we know everybody's brain is different, although you generally get good outcomes with a large percentage of people. And EEG is going to be the basis, and we are looking into incorporating artificial intelligence to tease out. I can talk a lot more outside of this meeting, but we see some really interesting things that can help us to do that. Now, this is under peer review, a pilot study done at St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto. They are part of the University of Toronto. There's a lot here, a lot of data, but we have looked into the effects of this device delivering gamma to 20 subjects. Is a double-blind sham-controlled study. And we looked at cognitive outcomes measured to the really significant one was to MMSE here, which is quite commonly used. Then we looked at serum mitochondrial metabolites and looked at the mitochondrial metabolism. Some of them are quite significant. I think the ratio between lactate and pyruvate is one that is pretty, I think, credible in looking at the effects of mitochondria on Alzheimer's. When I say Alzheimer's, I meant this is mild Alzheimer's, mild cognitive impairment. Then we looked at plasma inflammatory factors. We looked at the connectivity through fMRI, and we looked at even the volumetric change. So one thing the photobiomodulation does, also from our other work, is it seems to help the regrowth of brain cells, particularly in the hippocampal area. So this other study also did that. The main investigator actually used the MRI quite a bit. So these are quite significant numbers. It's still a pilot, and we are taking this to the next level, talking to the FDA and say, okay, the data seems to pan out. We have other earlier data, so we want to do a big clinical trial. Other further evidence of brain response, we got a lot more, but we want more answers. And we might be collaborating with some people here too. If you feel like you see something here, let's go find out more. I'll be happy to talk to you. We fund most of our basic research. Nobody does it. We are working with University of Calgary, looking at actually super radiance covered by Dr. Korean here too. We're looking at the Jack Danielski group at Turin and Alberta on cultured neuronal signaling. We want to see the structural changes in microtubules with different interventions. So we have quite a lot more that we want to do. Now, we are also doing this, we put people, we want to see what happens to the brain in real time in an MRI scanner. We are looking at collaborating with University of Toronto and Harvard in putting high-level meditators into the MRI scanner, real time, do the different frequencies and see what's happening to their brain. We don't know, it's never been done in real time. There is a big study done at Harvard by Matthew Satcher's group using very high resolution T7 scanner and saw the changes in the brainstem, which look different from some of the earlier studies that have come out looking at the networks. So we will discover new things, and maybe we will one day, Sanjeev and I were kind of working on, okay, let's do a shortcut and get people like me to be a good meditator and beyond,
Yes, Lew, you're just doing it for yourself, basically.
Oh yeah, for myself, okay. For selfish reasons here, maybe we can help other people. So we have summit coming up in Toronto. We are planning this, so you can register. I think we have physical and online presentations too. So go there because we are interested to hear some of not. It's not all about our technology. It's really we find that as we do this, we are teasing out more understanding of what's happening to the brain and what's happening to the expert meditator's brain. So, and hopefully if this is good, we will continue every year. And we have a flyer somewhere. And, some of the speakers are actually very good scientists in that area. Now, this is part of, we do a lot of collaboration. I'm putting up to thank a lot of people. What I presented to you is part of we do in neurology, what we do in basic science, cellular structures and all that, and meditation. But we got some crazy. This method of brain stimulation is giving some pretty crazy outcomes in sports. For example, American football college football players. Watch out, that paper by University of Utah has submitted for review now, showing also diffusion tensor imaging of the brain. I think that is objective measure. It's not just like I'm reporting, I'm getting better, and I'm scoring better in school and stuff like that. So we have a lot going on, and I'm writing paper now on brain fog in long COVID, which we had pretty significant outcomes. So these are a lot of people that we collaborate with, and of course our team at Vielight. Thank you very much.